everybody, Bandit here. Welcome back to the channel. Today on the channel we're back in the Diamond DS62 for our next leg in our series around the world flight. We're in Nagasaki, Japan, and we're going to be heading up the coast to the northern part of the main island to a place called Kushiro, Japan, which is another airport that has been handcrafted in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Just show you on the map. It's a really long trip. We're going to fly up at about 19,000 feet, or flight level 190, and we're going to head up the south coast of Japan. I just wanted to go up here, just a bit more scenic. We're going to fly over Tokyo and then fly by Mt Fuji, so should be some good scenery. Just some broken cloud today. It's good weather. The reason why we're going so high though is because it's a really long leg. It's about 6 hours and we need to take advantage of the wind, so we're going up to flight level 190, and I'll show you on the flight planning software how I can check that out once we get up to the top of climb. So I have the flight plan all loaded up and the airplane all started up. We're ready to go. We're on the ramp here. We're going to taxi out and we're just going to do a departure out of here. Just go over real quick. It's off runway 14 and we're just going to follow this departure track up to Otia and then up to flight level 190 by Kroki. And we have that loaded in. And I'll just show you the whole route here on the page. So there's our departure and there's our route going all the way up the coast. So it's a long route, but luckily it's a lot of airways, so I didn't have to put in too many points. Okay, let's without further ado, let's get going because it's a long trip and we can't afford to waste any gas. Another beautiful sunrise here in Nagasaki. So let's head on out. Parking brakes off. Your taxi light on. And it's a pretty long runway. We're going to do an intersection takeoff. Yeah, we're lucky with the weather. I wanted to originally do this a little bit lower, like 7,000 feet, but it's a pretty long leg and I needed a really good tailwind to do it at that altitude. So I'll show you the winds a little bit later on, but it was going to be almost a 7-hour trip if I did it at that altitude. So I had to go up as high as I could, and the service ceiling on this airplane is flight level 200 or 20,000 feet. We're going to go at 190 for the direction of flight. Okay, so I'll get the pitot heat on, get the fuel pumps on, get the strobe light on, landing light on, taxi light off. Just do a quick flaps right takeoff. I got flight level 190 set, runway heading set. We have the GPS set up. I think we're all ready to go. It's clear to the right. Clear to the left. Go full power. Power, T's and P's are in the green. Airspeed's alive. There's 80 knots, rotate. Pause rate, gears up. And accelerating. Just going through 100 knots. Flaps up. Autopilot gauge, flight level change, climb at 110, we'll gauge nav mode. I'll set the climb power at 95. There we go, 95%. Another beautiful sunrise. And we'll do a post-takeoff check. Gear is up, flaps are up. Throw the boost pumps off. Leave the landing light on for till 10,000 feet. Transition altitude is at 14,000 feet, so we'll keep a standard altimeter set for now. We get another beautiful sunrise here over Nagasaki. See this up in the corner, that's a little thing I use. I have it up sometimes just to see what my frame rate is. Getting pretty good frame rates, up to 58, 55 right now, so I'll just shut that off. It's a little free application called Shift Z. Shows things like fuel, position, frame rate, different things like that. It's kind of handy if you need it for that information. So climbing along pretty good. We got a pretty long climb here. And I'm going to go back to this is in topo mode just to see our terrain. So I'm going to go back to just normal relative topo mode instead of relative terrain. Zoom in on our track here. And we've got a long leg to go here. I'm going to see if we can get a little shortcut. So I just request from ATC if we could go direct to GoRo, and so say they give us direct there. So I'll just go into my flight plan. I'll cursor down to that, go direct to, and activate that. And there we go. So we're direct to GoRo. That's going to save us a little bit of time as opposed to having to go all the way out. Climb going. Okay, so we got a long climb going here. Beautiful sunrise. Beautiful view of the airport there. Boy, they really built that quite far out into the water. Hop outside here. So the weather is beautiful today. We're just going to have this broken cloud, so we should be able to see lots of the terrain as we're flying along, even at flight level 190. Just look down through the broken cloud. So I'll check in with you at the top of climb, and then I'll just go over the flight planning that I used for picking the altitude I want to fly at. So I'll see you at the top of climb, and we'll get all set up for our cruise. Okay, just as we're climbing out here, I just wanted to point out that we need to be at this GoRo at 17,000 feet or above, and you can see based on climbing to 190, you can see the banana bar showing us we're going to be 190 past that, so we might be tight on making that altitude there. So if you remember last time I talked about what these reference speeds are, and we want a max rate of climb for dual engine will be 89 knots, I believe. So if I just adjust my speed back, and I think the lowest I can go is 90 knots with the autopilot, so I'll adjust it back to 90. And then now you can see that rate of climb is going to increase, and once it settles out, we should be able to get that to that altitude a little bit sooner. So our ground speed is going to be a little bit less, and we should get hopefully to 170 by the time we hit GoRo there. Okay, I'll check in with you at the top of the climb, and we'll see how that worked out. Okay, even going back to our max rate of climb speed, we're not going to make that waypoint by flight level 170. I just set the barrel to standard, and because of the high altimeter setting, we're actually dropped quite a bit on the altitude. So in this case, I would just advise ATC that we're going to be unable at altitude, and then if it causes any problems, he would have to take us maybe on radar vectors or to a different fix or something like that. But just advise them, and then they have to deal with the issue, and then we go from there. Anyway, so we'll just say there's no issues. We'll just continue the climb up to 190, and we have to be at 190 by the next waypoint, which is Croaky, and that shouldn't be any problem because we're showing 190 well before Croaky. Okay, so we'll continue the climb, and while we're finishing the climb up here, I'll just go over the flight plan. So I use SimBrief, and you can see it's 6 hours and 2 minutes at flight level 190. And originally I ran the plan at 9,000 feet, and it was almost 7 hours. So what I did was I enlarged the map, and then they have the wind feature up here that you can use. And so I showed the winds at 10,000 feet, and you can see you got a little bit of a push, 20 knots, and then it dies off to no wind up here, and then you got a very, very minor tailwind for the rest of the way, like less than 10 knots, more like 5 knots. So then what I did was take a look at the winds at 20,000 feet, or at 18,000 feet, which is the closest altitude we're going to. And now you can see we get a nice push. We're up to about almost 40 knots of a tailwind. It tapers off a little bit, but it stays above 20. So we, on average, will get a much more of a tailwind component for a majority of the trip. Probably on average 15, 20 knots more. And over the course of 6 hours, that's quite a bit. So that makes up that difference of an hour. Plus, we get probably a better fuel burn and efficiency at flight level 190. So that's a good tool to use. So when I first saw the first time of 7 hours, almost 7 hours, I think it was 6:56, I just went and looked at the wind chart, and I looked for a better altitude to see if it was better or higher, and it was. So I ran it again at 190, and it ended up being just over 6 hours. So that's how I do the flight planning for that. And we're just coming up to our altitude here. The sun is up. Nice early start again. And then when we get to our cruise, we'll take a look at the different fuel flows again for the fuel burns. Oh no, another thing on the flight planning you can do as well, when you run it using the DA62. So I'll just edit the flight again. And when you choose the DA62 aircraft, you get different fuel burns. So you got standard is 75%, the default. Then you can go for fast cruise at 95%. You can do 60%, which is long range cruise, and you even have max endurance, which I think is 45%. So that is what the fuel burn is based on. So I picked 60% for my fuel burn. If I ran it again at say 75%, I might not have enough gas. So let's just run it again. And so now we see the burn is 553. So we could, but then it says warning, flight exceeds aircraft range. So the fuel burn is going to be too high that we're not going to have enough reserve fuel when we get to our destination. So that's why I had to go back to the 60%. So that is available for quite a few aircraft. For the DA62, if you're using the DA62 in SimBrief, it's an option available to select the different fuel burns for the different cruise settings. So you can play with that on your flight plans, and in this case we're able to do a pretty long trip. The trip is 1,040 nautical miles, so it's quite long, and we're going to level off. We should be at about 165 true, 168 true, and then hopefully we've got a good tailwind. See up here we're at 35 knots, so it's a much better push than if we were down low. So when we level off here, I'm going to keep the power up, and you can see also at this altitude we're unable to maintain that 95%. The engines are less efficient up here, so the max power we can push up to. Even when I go max power, it's only going to give us 83%. That's all we can get. So all that did was increase my prop a little bit. So once we level off, I'll let the speed build up a bit. Once we get about 165 true, I'll set my power. And I'll go down to the engine page here. So as the speed builds up here, go to the engine page and we'll just check the fuel burn and we'll see our endurance. So right now, at this power setting, with this fuel burn of 16.4 gallons per hour, we're going to have an endurance of 5 hours, which is not enough, and then we don't have enough range to get us to our destination. So that's why going faster is not always better. So I suck the power back. So I'll go back to the 75% cruise, and we'll see how that works out. So now we're 75% cruise. Our fuel burns down to 14.8. And it shows the endurance is going to be 5.5 hours now, which is 1153. So remember when I ran the flight plan at 75, it was going to be about 5 hours and 30 minutes. Well, that is basically not giving us any reserves.
Vertical track.
And so then we're going to not have much gas left when we get there if we run at the 75. So now when I go back to 60, although 1173 is pretty good for the range, I'll go back to the 60, and you can see our true airspeed is going to bleed off a little bit. But when I set the 60% power, we're down to basically just under 12 gallons per hour. Now we're looking at endurance of 6.8, and look at our range. It's shot way up there. So this is obviously the best speed for long range flying. So I'm going to leave it at that. Our airspeed's bleeding off a little bit. We're still getting 180. It's going to bleed off a little bit, probably back into the 170s. And with the push though, we're doing well over 200 knots on the ground speed. So we're getting 35 knots on the ground speed. So we got a long way to go. What I'll do is I'll check in with you when we're probably about a third away, and we'll see how things are looking. If we have any good scenery to see along the way, I'll record that. But for now, we'll just be in a long-range cruise here at flight level 190. The sun is up. It's a beautiful day, just some broken cloud, and I'm expecting it's going to be like this or better. I think the cloud scatters out as we get more north, so should be great weather. Okay, I'll check in with you a little further along in the route. Hey, we're back at cruise here. I descended down to 17,000 feet. We're kind of riding in this scud layer at 19,000 feet, so I just want to get clear of that because we're just coming up on Mt Fuji. So if we look over there, there's Mt Fuji just off in the distance. And Tokyo is just up in this area here, so we'll get a nice view of Tokyo when we fly by. So we're at flight level 170 now. Still getting the 12 knot tailwind push. And just looking at the fuel, we're down to about 10 gallons a side. So if I go to lean, in the main tanks we have 10 gallons a side. Aux tanks, we still have our full aux tank, so good time to start transferring that over. So go down and turn each aux pump on. The left, right aux pumps are on, and the fuel will transfer over. Shows endurance of 4.8, 865 miles, 64 miles, so we should be pretty good. So there's a nice view of Mt Fuji off in the distance. And Tokyo should just be on the nose there. So I'll check in with you a little bit further, and we overfly Tokyo. We'll get some good views looking down at the city of Tokyo. It's enormous, so it should be interesting. Okay, I'll see you there in a few minutes. Hey, we're back at cruise here. I climbed back up to flight level 190. There was some heavy broken clouds, so I haven't been able to see much below us, but we're just coming clear of it now. Most of our fuel is transferred. We still got 4 gallons in each ox tank, and we're just over the city of Tokyo. So let's just hop outside and take a look. And pretty massive city. Goes on and on and on. Wow, it's incredible. This is the main port area back here, and airport. One of the international airports is just back here. And that's one of the handcrafted airports for Japan as well that they've done. And Tokyo Narita should just be up here to the right. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, there it is over here, I think. It would be the other international airport in Japan. It's Narita. No, I don't think that's it. That's 2 runways. Maybe back over in this cloud area over here. Anyway, massive city. And it's quite interesting to fly over low level too. I've done a couple of flights where I've flown out of the international down by the harbor here and just done some flights over the city. It's quite spectacular, so if you ever get a chance, make sure you do some flying in Japan. It's beautiful. So let's see how it's looking here. So we're pretty close to the halfway point, or maybe a little bit past it. Check out our fuel. Fuel transfer is still ongoing. We have 50 gallons remaining to use 35, so we're doing pretty good. We've got 4.3 hours endurance and 775, so that's more than enough to complete our leg with some reserves. Let's just take a look at the weather. So go to the flight plan. Cursor down to the end at our destination. And right now it is 2304 light winds, just a few clouds at 1000 scattered at 1500, 2 degrees, and 1028. So light winds, so we'll take a look when we get a little closer at what we're going to plan for the approach. We have a VOR approach in there that we can do. Should be pretty straight in, so hopefully we can do that. Anyway, that's the massive expanse of Tokyo there. Cool city to fly over. So we'll finish up the fuel transfer, and then we will continue on our rest of our en route portion up to our destination, which again is Kushiro, Japan. And again, it's one of the handcrafted airports that they've included in the Japan update. So Japan, a great country to fly around. I didn't realize it was the main island was this long. It's like 1,100 miles long. It's quite a long flight. So lots of great places to visit in Japan if you get the chance. Okay, so I'll check in with you a little further along as we get closer to our destination and start planning our approach. Okay, we're getting a little closer here, and weather's scattering out nicely. So looking pretty good up ahead. We'll get the latest weather at the airport and see how that looks. So still winds are 190 at 8, few at 1000 and 1500, scattered 2 degrees, 1017. So the runways are 35 and 17, so I would say with those winds it's obviously favoring 17, so I'm going to take a look at an approach for 17 and then we'll load that up. Okay, looking at the arrival and the approach right now, we're going to come in our last waypoint is Akasi, so we will look at doing the RNAV arrival via Akasi, which is going to take us over to the initial fix for the ILS, so it's going to be the Mt 17 arrival. And then the ILS will be transition from Mt onto the ILS, so we'll load that up. So if I go to procedure, we'll select arrival, and we'll load the Mt arrival. And yeah, that looks good. Enter that. And then the approach will be the ILS 17 and via Mt. And we don't need any minimums for this because it's good weather. We're just using it to get to final, and we'll load that. So that's all loaded in. So we see our top of descent is about an hour away. So what I'll do is we'll take another look at the weather just prior to top of descent, and then we'll start that transition and arrival. So I'll see you as we get closer to the top of descent. Weather's looking pretty good, and weather looks good at the destination. Fuel is good, so things are looking pretty good. I think this is one of the longest legs I've flown so far. Okay, I'll see you in about an hour. Hey everyone, we're back here on the descent, just passing through 12,000. Transition L2 is 14, so I'm going to sit over the barometer to take it out of standard. 1027. And we're on the V path on our descent on the arrival. So that's going to take us to Minok, and then we're going to follow around for the ILS approach. Once we are inbound to Minok, we will activate the approach. And the weather looks pretty good. I'll just double check the weather here on the flight plan. And it's 200 at 6 now. Variable winds, scattered clouds, so light winds, 1027. So looking pretty good. Just coming through 10,000 feet. We'll get the landing light on. So we still got a little ways to go till we get on final. So I'll check in with you a little bit further down as we roll on to final for the approach. See you in a few minutes. Okay, we're on the path and we're just coming up to Minok. Just initial fix, so anytime we can activate the approach. So if I just go to procedure, and I want to make sure I just activate the approach, not activate vectors to final. And so that we're still going to Minok, and then now we're just going to adjust the path, but now the approach is active, and then we should have our ILS frequencies loaded and ready to go when we start on the approach. So that should make the transition. So we're still V path, just a little bit below the path, and we're looking for 3,600 feet for Minok there, and then we're going to fly the arc down to 2,400 feet. So we have 2,400 feet set. Just some scattered clouds around, a little hilly over here. But still nice weather at the airport. There's the path coming back. And show you the approach. So we hit Minok, and then once we're on min-up, we go down to 2,400 feet on the arc to the initial fix, and then from the initial fix we'll be on the ILS from there. So I'll check in with you again as we finish up the arc, and we'll transition up to the ILS. See you there in a couple minutes. Okay, we're just coming up to the path for the descent down to the initial fix there, 2,400 feet. And for some reason the V path wasn't armed again, so I'm just going to have to hit VNav again. And we're above the path, so I'm going to have to vertical speed it down. Bring a little bit of power back. So V path is armed now. We're at vertical speed. Going for 2,400 feet. And for some reason the ILS didn't set up in the background there, so put that in 108.9. Transfer that over. Put our course of 168 in. So that's ready to go. Usually it automatically does this for us, but for some reason it didn't, so IKS is ready to go. Transitioning into the ILS. Just coming up on 2,500 feet. So we'll leave the speed off when we level off here. I'll switch over the course to the CDI to VOR1 or NAV1. So the airport should be straight ahead. So I'm going to switch the CDI to NAV1 and then arm the approach. So localizer's captured. We're alt captured at 2,400 feet. Glide slope is armed. We're below the glide slope, so we're just going to pick up the glide slope. So normally when you activate the approach, it should automatically set this up, the transition to the ILS for you, but you always have to be ready in case it doesn't do it. In this case it didn't, so just manually switched over. So there's a little bit of cloud around. In general, the visibility is pretty good. So I'll get the boost pumps on, landing lights on, get the gear as the glide slope, we intercept the glide slope, and get our approach flaps set. Like a more isolated area of Japan here. I don't think there's a major city here. Here comes the glide slope. Get the gear down. So power back for the descent a bit. Speed is good. Put our approach flaps in. So here we got 3 green. Approach flap set. Glide slope is captured. Scud cloud off to the side here, just ahead of us, but starting to break out now. But less power, start bleeding the speed off. A little bit of a headwind component, so looks good for this runway. So we have the runway in sight, just lying flat to go. Speed of 119. So speed's coming back. Speed is good. We'll get our land flap selected. Add a little bit of power as the speed bleeds off. To go, gear is down, flaps are at land, boost pumps are on, lights are good. The autopilot off. Speed's good. And touchdown. Welcome to Kushiro. Stop, make our first left here. Your lane light off, taxi light on, strobe light off, pumps off, P2P off. There we go. Kushiro Airport. Just park off to the right here. Oh, looks like we even have a marshaller to park us. Taxi lights off. See how we make this for parking here. There we go. Parking brake set. The engine's off. And we'll get the nav light off. Get our flaps up. There we go. Let's see how much gas we finished up the trip with. So if we go to the engine, we ended up with 16 gallons remaining. We burned 70 gallons. So the legs on this plane is amazing, especially when you get up high and you get a little tailwind. I mean, we flew well over 1,000 miles today. And still got lots of, well, I wouldn't say lots of gas, but we still got a good bit of gas left. Easily more than an hour's worth of fuel. So this is another handcrafted airport. Nice airport if you want to fly into Japan here. So thanks for joining me on today's trip. Hope you liked the trip. We're almost through Japan. Next trip we're going to be up to the Aleutian Islands, and then we're going to make the Pacific crossing through the Aleutian Islands over to Alaska. So we'll hit up through Russia and hopefully get up to maybe around Shemya Island in the Aleutians, and then we'll hop across Aleutians the next trip, and then from there it'll be Alaska and then Canada bound, and then back to where we started. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed today's flight, If you did, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, take the time to subscribe now and sign up for notifications, and then you'll see our next flight. I just saw that the latest version of the NXI came out, so I'll try to do a flight in the next day or two to go through some of the new features on that. So again, thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on the Bandit Flight Simmer channel. Bandit out.